On today's show, we discuss, can God be a woman?
Hello and welcome to TGI Monday. We're filming this during Lent, and I have a confession to make. On Saturday I did break my Lent discipline. I know.
Oh.
So I've been doing, it's been really good though. So taking my cue from the Diocese Lent book, Dethroning Mammon, I have been doing during Lent not buying stuff. And indeed, not just not buying it, but even when people have been offering me free stuff, I'm like, no. Yeah, so I'm allowed to buy like food and petrol and stuff, but it's just like stuff. So I haven't bought any books or any yarn or, you know, kitchen thing. Yeah, it's been really interesting. Yeah. But anyway, I did on Saturday, I slightly broke.
What did you buy?
Well, so I went to Quarrybank Mill in Cheshire, which is like an old coffee place. I really loved it.
Lovely.
Yeah, and I bought some of their fabric because, you know, you can't buy it anywhere else, and it was lovely. And anyway, but I just wondered, what else is anyone doing for Lent discipline? Do you have something you always do? Are you doing something different this year? Or
so I'm actually trying to work smarter as well as work harder and try to find ways of getting to know my community better.
Good.
So when I'm in my office and I'm just busying myself with writing sermons or whatever, I put a big sign outside my door that says the vicar is in. And so it means that people
and how does your vicar feel about that?
Well, you know, I have promoted myself. The bishop does know, and he's all right with it, fortunately. But it's meant that people know that I'm available, and people have been turning up at my door to talk to me, and they're talking about it around the village, and more people are saying they're going to come because they know that I'm available during those times. So that's my. And because it's working, I'm going to keep it going.
Great. Anyone else?
I'm doing fasting on Friday, and the money I'm saving by not eating the food I'm giving to the diocesan Lent appeal.
Lovely.
And I'm doing the examine most days, which has been quite, as it always is, where you look back at the day and give thanks for the good things that have happened. So it's been really good, that has.
Excellent. Good. Anyone else?
Well, I, as always, try to do far too many things. I should give that up one Lent. But this Lent, I'm doing 40 things, which is from a website. And so, helpfully, every day, it gives you a message which says things that you should do. And actually, I've been really pleased by the sort of variety of things that it said. One of them was to go for a long walk in nature.
Oh, lovely.
And I already had that planned for that day.
How fabulous.
That's just amazing. But just being reminded to do those things, I think, is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to do something called 40 bags, which essentially goes along, I think, similar lines to the sort of against mammon idea. That instead of not buying things, I'm trying to get rid of things.
We always do that actually in our house.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So a bag
get rid
every
of 40
day.
things at least.
Wow.
Great.
Which doesn't happen every day, but I try.
It's a good,
I'm hoping by the end of Lent there will be 40 bags gone.
Yeah, if you do it in splurges, we intended it to be a daily get rid of something each, but actually we did a big splurge on Saturday.
That's sometimes easier than every day.
Yeah. But
Simon, are you doing anything?
Oh, there he is.
Far too busy. Which is wrong, and completely wrong.
Yes. Stop doing things for Lent.
Create setting up the Bishop's Lent appeal and things like that.
But you don't have to give something up for Lent.
you
can take
up.
something on, and
Yeah.
that's the crucial thing about Lent, isn't it? It's
it's
not simply about giving up chocolates and
No.
Take up prayer.
No, I like that sort of balance that Hal's got of sort of doing the fasting, but then also doing an extra spiritual practice. That's sort of adding
Lent
to
has
that.
traditionally been, isn't it, is the three things of almsgiving, fasting and prayer.
Yes, and that's a good thing
Prayer
to be doing.
includes Bible study as well.
Good.
So it's
Yeah, I was actually talking to one of my friends about it, who was saying, but I don't think it's about giving things up. I'm like, well, no, the point is that you give things up to help you to get closer to God,
Exactly.
to prepare yourself for the coming of Easter. And it's like, but that's what it's about, preparing yourself. I'm like, yes, it is.
By
Because
giving
it
stuff
really is about not what you do. And if you do focus too much on the things, I think, then you lose the fact that it's about God.
Yes.
If by getting rid of these 40 bags, I'm not going to get any more time with God or any deeper in my relationship with Jesus, then there is no point in me
Exactly.
doing
It's not, as someone on my Twitter feed said, just a second chance at your New Year's resolution.
No.
That's
More like
really
a
wrong.
spiritual reset button.
Exactly.
That's what it feels like.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our question. Exactly. We've had this question from Catherine via our website. Catherine said she was binge watching TGI Monday while she wasn't very well a couple of weeks ago.
Was that a symptom or
I don't know.
As penance.
We hope you're feeling better now.
I do that with Walking Dead. So.
And this is her question. She wants to know, what are your thoughts on God portrayed as feminine? God should represent us all, but is the image of a goddess too pagan? How about substituting she and her for he and his in liturgy? So good question, Catherine. This is something that's certainly been on the agenda in the contemporary church for the last 20 or 30 years, but actually has a much older history than that, doesn't it? I guess maybe a good place to start would be just to think about, why is it that we do normally think of God as masculine? What are the sort of reasons why we, the liturgy does normally say he and his, and why we have that, and then think about why we might challenge that?
We're all holding back. I said Jesus was a bloke.
Jesus was
definitely.
definitely a bloke.
Definitely a man.
So that's one thing.
He talked to.
Yeah.
Jesus refers to God as Father, and we have
God
those.
is it's a masculine pronoun.
It's a masculine name word in both Hebrew and Greek. Yeah, so we get lots of that sort of father, son, master, brother,
if we want to look at it
bridegroom.
from a sort of more liberation or
Yeah.
a black or a women's theology, if you like, point of view, the Bible was written in a patriarchal society at every stage.
Right.
And so what would they say as the highest? They would say it was a man. That
Yeah.
is,
Except for the fact that there were lots of female deities in many nations. So it wasn't the case that all gods were men and therefore our God's a man too.
Yeah.
Actually,
but
the majority of
God
gods were female.
the king of gods was. I haven't found one in the studies that I've done of religions that the chief god was a woman.
Right.
Okay, but we don't have a chief god. I think the point is...
We have a god above all gods. We have the King of Kings.
Okay,
we have the Lord of Lords.
But I mean, there's not like a pantheon in the Christian, Judeo-Christian religion. It is literally just you have God and all
that's
other gods,
absolutely
and all other
true.
gods are idols.
But
so what you'll
I'm
see,
not-
so it would have been very safe for early theologians to have had a female deity, because all the nations around often had female deities as well. It wouldn't have been unsafe to have that.
But you're right, there
I'm
is-
not entirely sure that that's correct. But the point that I'm making is not about whether it's right or wrong. The point is, it was a patriarchal society. That's the point that I'm making.
But that's the amazing thing, though, if we look at how patriarchal the society was in the ancient world, is if we look through the Old Testament and the New, we still have, huge amounts of feminine references to God. Like, for example, if we have in Proverbs, we have wisdom is always a woman. We have...
Sophia,
yeah. We have... lots of prophetesses. We have Ruth, we have Esther, and so on and so forth. And even in the New Testament, St. Paul talks about being nourished by the milk and things like that. So there's, and Jesus talks about dangling Jerusalem on his knees and all
being like a
sorts of
mother hen,
and all these other things.
Yeah,
so there's all sorts of,
so there is, I guess, so...
It's a mixed picture, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I guess I want to kind of say, it was not a kind of arbitrary choice that Christians suddenly kind of decided he must be, there are reasons why that has been the case and why that has been the sort of dominant thing. But as you say, there have also always been, well, I don't know if always, but there have certainly been for quite a long time these sort of feminine strands within Christianity. So I'm thinking of sort of Julian of Norwich and people like that, but also a much more recent.
But the voice that God is speaking, so in... I'd say Hal's already references quite a lot of female imagery where God is, the voice of God is heard as a mother, as a nourisher. There's lots and lots
through
of
a female prophet.
Isaiah. I don't mean through a female. I'm talking God, the voices that are attributed to God are talking about mothering. And actually, there are... there are quite a lot of reasons that aren't necessarily helpful that we don't have that in our liturgy, but we're really doing our because it's not that God should be either male or female. None of us think God is male, do we?
No, and that's right.
And so we need to use both pronouns.
Well, not necessarily, because in John 4:24 we hear that God is spirit, and so if God is spirit, he's not actually man or woman. He is something beyond us, and our own gender points to him.
And we know that both male and female are made in the image of God.
That's absolutely right. And it's really important. Yeah. It's really important to recognise that there is a lot of feminine imagery in Scripture. Jesus himself uses feminine imagery about himself. Paul uses feminine imagery about himself. But you see, the difference is that whilst there's feminine imagery of God, titles of God are always masculine. And for me personally, I wouldn't dare address God in any other way than he has asked me to address him. Jesus prayed to God the Father. It doesn't make sense for him to pray to God the Mother because Jesus had a mother, which was Mary.
I
do hear what you're saying, but Jesus knew God as both male and female because he was a good Jew. And so we've already talked, as Howell did, about the Sophia literature, about the wisdom literature. We're talking about the books of Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Songs of Songs.
But these are images.
Wisdom of Solomon and Ecclesiasticus, which is from the Apocrypha.
But these are images, not titles.
No, they are. The title of God as wisdom.
Wisdom.
I think if you look at the books, they are very clear that we're talking about God. And there is feminine...
I think there's an interesting parallel in modern society where we do have this situation of gender being very fluid and people who are transgender and so on. And it seems to me that the thing that we're told always, and I think this is exactly right, is that we should address people according to the gender they identify as. Somebody is identifying as female, we address them as she and her and whatever. And it seems to me that we ought to show that same courtesy, at the very least, to God who has revealed himself through the Bible, I believe anyway, and consistently uses those pronouns of he and him. And so
God is male for you?
There is a big difference between God as he is in himself and God as he reveals himself. So he exists as a non-gendered God because
non-gendered, not both genders.
I would say non-gendered because he's God. And yet in our language is gendered, and he associates himself with the masculine pronouns and names.
You're an Old Testament theologian. Is there any point in the Old Testament where God is actually addressed as a female deity?
I don't think so, but it does depend how. You could argue in Proverbs 8, but I think that is more complicated than that. But I would say so.
So does that give it then us a precedence to refer to God as mother?
It assumes that something about the way that we've always used Scripture, the way we use Scripture now, is as though that's how we've always treated it. Whereas these are stories that were passed on through oral tradition. So the imagery and the names of God, these were never intended to be. The unutterable name of God, because whatever name we pick is not going to be adequate.
Yeah. Well, there is actually no unutterable name. That was Jewish.
But I think the other thing is as well with all this is. It's to do with how God reveals himself in the here and now today. And God reveals himself through all sorts of images and uses all sorts of voices. And there are people who, right across the world, have had experiences of God speaking with a woman's voice. And because then people hung up on all sorts of almost sort of dogmatic objections to that, they then push those voices aside. And I think that we need to take people's experience in the here and now of God revealing himself with a female voice and in a female form seriously. And like for me, because I come from a matriarchal society, right? When they asked me why I was going to why I was putting myself forward for a priest, I said, because God is a woman and she's Welsh. because she goes on and on and on and on at you until you throw your hands in the air and then you say, I'm going to do it. And that's my experience of being called to the priesthood by God.
But it's still an image of the title.
Anyway, we need to finish. We have gone over time. I think you can see we have some disagreements about this on the panel, and it's interesting to me that some of those disagreements are around how do we use scripture, how do we think about experience, how do we think about tradition. Actually, the kind of big things that you know will end up with different answers on all kinds of questions. It is an interesting question, and we would love to continue that conversation with you.
That was the biggest row ever had.
I knew it started.
I know.
But it's really hard.
Maybe I should have said less controversial. No, but we like the controversial ones, so it's fine. So thank you for watching this week, and thanks for Catherine sending that question in. If you've got questions, please do send them in for us. Please send us slightly easier ones. You can go to our website, tgimonday.show, and send them through the contact form there.
That wasn't a hard question.